Well, hello there, and welcome to the Everyday Fi podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode follows the journey of Abhishek, an immigrant from India who fell in love with the United States and all the opportunity it provides for him, including financial independence. This episode is all about designing your extraordinary life around health, volunteering, meditation, and deciding deeply about what truly serves you. We also go into depth about how to become a stock picker if that's your jam, as long as, the bulk of your portfolio is in broad-based index funds, of course. So tune in to hear Abhishek's incredible story and what advice he gives to all of us about health and mindfulness. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'll be talking with Abhishek about his financial independence journey. Hey there, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Megan. Happy to be here. I'm originally from Pune, a city in central India. I completed my master's from Texas A&M University, and I currently work as a project manager for a construction company in the Bay Area. I enjoy talking about personal finance, playing tennis, and analyzing stocks in my part-time.
Would you consider yourself a stock picker, or do you also have broad-based index funds that you invest in? What's your strategy there when it comes to stocks?
I would say I'm 97, 98% in index funds. I believe in index funds, and that kind of actually stopped me from doing the individual stocks. But I recognize that I just enjoy doing it. So there's a small portion of fund that I enjoy investing in. And it's rather than stocks, it's more about learning about those businesses, how well they are doing. I think that's what I'm more curious about. So that's just the hobby that I have.
That's really interesting. I'd like to hear more. What goes into the kind of companies that you choose for your portfolio?
I think there are a lot of things. I mean, a business is a dynamic. It's always evolving and moving in one or the other direction. Some of the key things that we look at, how strong is the competitive advantage for the business in the market and what are its return on capital, and then what is currently trading at in terms of valuation. But I really enjoy learning the histories of businesses. For example, Costco, Berkshire Hathaway, Apple, and you don't have to have big names. There are smaller names actually that have great stories to learn from. So I enjoy reading and learning that. And then if I like it, I like to be part of that company and see their growth and then be part of that journey. And that's why I do what I do.
Well, that's really interesting. And it's a much more interesting way of choosing a company rather than just based on their earnings reports. It's a little bit more, I guess it has a human level to it that I really like. And yeah, do you have any advice for somebody who might want to get into that? How did you start doing that?
I started writing my blog about 6 years ago, did it for about 3 years, and then took a break to do some, side hustles and whatnot. And I'm going back to it now that I'm financially way more comfortable than 6 years ago. And I just recommend that you have to enjoy the process. Investing is like watching paint dry. You have to have a lot of patience. And if you enjoy that, then you'll just get hooked on it like I have. That's what I would recommend.
Cool. What's your blog called so people can follow?
It's called coffeewithabhishek.com. That's the blog. I haven't posted there in a while, but I'm hoping to post it a lot this year.
All right. I'll put that in the show notes for people to go and follow. And since you're going to be posting there again, they can go catch up on all your prior content before you start posting. So how did you find the financial independence community?
So in 2016, I got my first job when I moved to Bay Area from Texas A&M after graduation. And I had student loans. It wasn't big, but it was few. And then because I had moved from India, I was really restricted in terms of what I can do to earn more money. And it just happened so that I found us as a family in a very difficult financial situation. And so I just basically had to step up. And I was like, what can I do? What are my options, right? How do I get to a better place from where I am? And so it was a lot of anxiety, scarcity minded that I had. And that's when I started searching and trying to learn. And I came across Money Mustache's blog. And that's how I got to know about financial independence.
What drew you to this specific financial movement versus any of the other ones that you might have found? Because this one is definitely very different from traditional financial advice.
Initially, I didn't really enjoy my job when I was working for a general contractor. And I felt like I was stuck because of visa restrictions. I couldn't change careers very easily because of my visa. And then that became very difficult. And then I was like, well, I just want to be independent and then find something better. So then I, over the years, realized that it's really the independence that I'm looking for. I really don't want to be tied to 9 to 5. I love some things that about my job even now, and I might do them part time, but I don't want to be tied to somebody else and do what they say at their time. I want to do it at my leisure because that's what I really enjoy.
And so it sounds like a big motivation for this, though, is because it's harder for you to find a job because of the visa restrictions. I'm hearing that you want this independence so that you don't have to rely on somebody giving you a visa to actually make an income. Is that correct?
Sort of. If I could
Yeah.
clarify, I could get another job. I could move to companies. I can potentially move to different industries, but it's way harder because I can't be without a job. If I just give up on a job and take a 6 months break off, I can't do that because of my visa. So I'm tied, right? And switching industries is just too difficult, or I rather felt like my opportunity cost was way too high there. And so I am basically trying to do what I really enjoy. And I realize that I just don't enjoy 40-hour work. I just don't. I think I would enjoy 20-hour work a lot. And I'm trying to go from 40-hour work to something like part-time where I'm more productive, happy, and I have other things in my life taken care of.
Thank you for clarifying that. So you can't go down to no work ever because you have to have the work visa to stay in the country is what I'm hearing. You want to go down to part-time work, and that's why you're pursuing financial independence. And I heard you mention your family was in a certain kind of financial situation. Are you married with kids? Are you living with your parents or your other family members? Who else is involved in your financial independence journey?
So I'm single. I do have a family that's back home. I have a cousin who lives in DC, and then my parents are in India. And I consider us as the close family, her mom, my aunt as well. And not that they're dependent on me, but it's just that me and my father worked in last 6 years to uplift us as a family with whatever financial journey that our education I learned about. And he was actually a businessman, but we were just in a difficult time and we had to work together to get out of it. And now that he's fully retired, I'm comfortable, but it took us like strong 6-8 years to come out of that situation.
Gotcha. And is that one of the reasons why you moved to the United States, or were there other reasons?
No, moving to the United States has been a very complete funny story. I came here never to stay, and now I feel like I never want to go back. I came here initially to probably just get masters and go back. And my father had a small company at the time, and I thought I would go back and bring some value and education that I've learned from US. Because our financial situation didn't allow for that as a choice, I had to get a job. Then I got the visa, and then it just made sense for me to stay here to support us as a family. When we compared other opportunities of going back, and few years down the lane, I just enjoyed being here. Even though I didn't really like the job that I was doing, I recognized that US as a country has really blessed me as a country and the opportunities that I have, and I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome. What do you mean that the US has blessed you as a country? I'd love to hear more about that.
When I say that, it just means in terms of opportunities, right? Even though I might have visa restrictions and whatnot, US has so many opportunities in every single sector that you want to get into. I have always met people who are open-minded, who are open to accepting other cultures. I'm very lucky to live in the Bay Area, which is a thriving market. And a lot of people think that it's a thriving market for tech, but that's not true. It's probably the second biggest construction market in the US just because of how much boom there is. And I enjoy being part of this community because I know that there are many opportunities to move around in the Bay Area itself if I ever have to switch my job.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that actually leads me to another question. How does living in the Bay Area affect your goals of saving? Because it's quite expensive out there.
Yes. It is very expensive. And I'll just say this. The good thing about Bay Area is that if you actually play your cards right and get the raises that you want and switch jobs every 3-4 years, the raises can be as high as 20-25%. And that will help you set yourself apart and be able to cover those expenses. A lot of people think about just expenses, but they miss out on the earning potential that Bay Area has. And I'm in construction. I'm not even in tech. All right. So I'm not speaking from a very small group of people. But even in construction, I found that because those opportunities are there, you can actually increase your income a lot. It's just something you have to work towards. And I did that. And now I feel very comfortable. I would say that expenses are definitely high. If I were to go anywhere else, I would be able to cut down my expenses by 50%. But I just value this weather and the outdoors that I have. And I made a decision for myself that, hey, these are my active years in my 30s, 40s, and 50s. I play tennis 4 times a week. I go on hikes. I work out 4 times a week, and I'm outdoors a lot. And I'm not going to get that anywhere else. And we all have one life where I'm active. So I want to enjoy my active years before I settle down somewhere else for other reasons, if any.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know that even though it's an expensive area to live in, it is part of your values to live in the Bay Area itself. And I think that's a big part of what our community likes to think about is spending money on the things that we value and then just mercilessly cutting everything else. That's where the key to happiness and financial freedom really lies. So it seems like you've cracked that one open. I do want to ask, you said play your cards right. Do you have any advice for people who are entering the job market on how to get those increases in salary, even if they're not living in a very expensive place? That gap between your expenses and your salary is huge. And I'm just wondering if you could give advice or tell us what you did to get those increases.
Yeah, I think what I did is that, and this is not something on my own, I learned the research from our community itself, of whether it's Choose Fi or other Fi communities, that I always had a very open conversation with my manager, told very openly that, hey, if I'm looking for a promotion, what are some of the skills that I need to grow on and help me out? And I had this kind of like a methodical approach that, okay, I'm gonna do this, so that I can get that. And I tried that for a few years, and I realized that in construction, it's not really about checking the boxes. It's about getting the overall experience. However, I just couldn't just stand still. I did a lot of other things in my role. So even though I was a project engineer or a project manager, I went out of my way to find problem in the business, in that company, and I raised my hand and say, hey, you know what? I am going to try and solve that problem. I'll take that initiative or whatever. And obviously that gives you a lot of light in terms of the leadership, and they see that you are being proactive. Now, even though they may not actually value those efforts, I actually use that experience to sell myself to the next employer and said, hey, in the last company, I did all this. So even if you're paying this much salary for a project manager, you have to pay me this much plus X because I bring all this additional value to your company, and I would love to do that. And I actually was able to sell. I have a recording of how my interview of negotiations went. And I just did that to share with my family and friends. And I was able to get about 40% hike and sign on bonuses and increases in terms of car allowance. That is not normal, but I was able to negotiate that very well. And I'm very grateful for it. But it happened because of what I did in my last company. And I'm continuing to do that in the same company I have, keep adding more value, keep showing up. And I'm hoping that either they would value it. If not, I know somebody else will.
A 40% increase, that's big. Congratulations. So are you going to be sharing out this interview recording or maybe even writing out a script on your blog at some point?
Not really. I think my blog is purely about investing. I have dabbled into getting into personal finance space and writing my journey, but I'm waiting to hit certain milestones before I can feel confident about, hey, you got a few right things, right? And I'm very close to that milestones. I'm already close to 5, but there are so many things that I want to do. And this is just one of the things that I've written down, but maybe might explore at some point when I get to 5.
Yeah. And that actually leads me to my next question. What does reaching 5 look like for you? What does the other side look like for you?
I looked at my life in several areas. And for starters, I enjoy staying fit. So life in 5 looks different in terms of not having to work 40 hours, staying fit, playing tennis. I've been currently working on finding purpose and meaning in my life for last 1 year. I've been on this journey since I went to Camp Fi last September. And then recently I came with this episode on Choose Fi podcast called Design Extraordinary Life. I've gone through multiple iterations of what those answers look like for me. I would want to put that vision out and then live that vision. I really enjoy our Fi community. I host local Fi meetups at my place probably once in 2 months. And I am actually currently volunteering as a personal finance coach for low income housing communities around here. And then obviously I enjoy investing. So a lot of my time would go in reading annual reports and books and listening to those podcasts and analyzing stocks.
That sounds like an awesome life after FI. Hopefully you're doing some of that now. It sounds like you are. And it's a Design Your Extraordinary Life. So that was, for anybody in the audience, the Fire in Vegas event that happened in early April that I was at. And you probably heard the episode back in June when they released it, where I was so nervous that my Fitbit thought I was exercising when I got up there to ask a question and talk about an exercise that we did. But it's a really awesome concept and episode. So everybody go and check it out. And I guess my next question for you is, if somebody wanted to do the same thing where they volunteered as a money coach for the less privileged people, how did you get into doing something like that?
Yeah, I just realized that I love talking about personal finance, but not all of my friends wanted to talk about it. And so I was like, well, I want to talk to somebody who thinks that I'm adding value. So I don't want to bore people out. I want to help people who need help, right? And so I came across this post on a local FI group about one of the members doing this. And I think it's a company called Eden Savers. I think they're a housing developer. And they had this Eden Savers program where they actually offer this as a benefit to their residents because they have a low income housing. This is a volunteering effort. So I just signed up, went through 4 or 5 hours of training initially to get orientation. They provide all the material. And then you just get connected with somebody for 6 months. It's a 6-month commitment, twice a month. And you meet them twice a month and you help them out with whatever they want help on. And basic things like creating a personal finance budget or tracking their expenses or understanding their credit report. And this Eden Savers program also benefits them because if they go through this program, they can actually get up to $400 at the end of the program just to go through all these sessions. And so that's like an incentive to help these people learn what personal finance is and help them out.
I am now very curious if I have something like that in my own backyard. I am going to, when we finish recording, look up and see if Durham has anything like that. And for anybody who's in the Bay Area, I'm going to link in the show notes. Is it Eden Savers? How do you spell it?
Yeah, it's Eden Savers. I can probably send you later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes. That's awesome. And it's amazing that you really want to give back to the community like that. Is there other ways that you want to give back to the community once you reach financial independence?
Yes. I was trying to figure out how should I build my purpose around investing. Investing seemed enjoyable journey, but for self-benefit. And I was like, well, how do I give back, right? And some of the people that I follow, like Monish Pabrai, I met him and I asked him that question. And he said, well, you can just give back by a percentage of your net worth or percentage of your portfolio. And so how I'm looking at is that I'm going to create my own portfolio, which hopefully goes big. And then if other people are joining me, whether it's my friends and family to manage this fund, there will be certain percentage that would directly go to a charity that I care about. And if I could continue to grow the portfolio, the amount that will go through this charity would also grow. And this is not my model at all. I'm literally copying it from Monish Pabrai, who does the same exact thing. He basically gives away a certain percentage of his net worth and runs a charity called Dakshina Foundation in India for education. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to play the same game and see where it goes. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
I really hope you get a lot of volunteers for that. Which charity would you give to?
I do like Dakshina Foundation. I asked him straight away, hey, do you even need funds? Do you not have already enough? And he's like, yeah, we're probably good. I would love to find opportunities and causes in education for the most part, because I truly believe that if you teach somebody how to make money, I think that's the best gift you can give. And so I would want to find a charity that track lot of what they do. The reason I like Dakshina Foundation is that they just have an annual report that basically tracks how many students have come in, how many students have we kept through for 2-year program, how many of them gone to IITs and other elite schools in India. And they track all the expenses and they also share the data. So I would want to do and give to a charity like that where I know how my dollar is being spent. And I know that for every dollar, it's making the biggest possible impact.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too, because you want to make sure that your dollar is stretching as far as it can. And of course, all charities are going to have admin costs and things like that obviously are not making like impact. But when you really think about it, every business has to have some of that. But there is a website, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's a website that rates charities on how they use your dollar. I'm going to look it up and put it in the show notes. I'll mention it later once I find it. But it's a great resource for anybody who wants to give back and wants to do it in a way that they know their dollar is going forward. So I'll mention that a little bit later.
I would be interested in knowing that if there is a website like that, just to give a data point for why I like a charity like Dakshina is because from their model, they basically have calculated this, that they take a kid or a student for about 2 years, and the 2 year expenses for one kid is approximately $3,000 only. And once they spend or somebody donates them $3,000 and a kid goes through that 2 years program, he basically gets into an elite school. And then all his 4 year education is self-funded because he can just take a loan as soon as he gets an admission. And then right off the bat, if he graduates, his salary becomes $15,000-$20,000, which is a lot in India. And these students are screened from a family income of $500 a month. These students are really from low income housing areas, right? Who are given this opportunity to study, sit, and then get to this elite schools and then increase their income dramatically, which doesn't only improve their life, it improves their family's life because they usually have 2 or 3 siblings and parents. So that's the impact that I'm talking about that I resonated with. So compounding that giving, right? Not just for that one person, but really for the family.
Yeah, that's a really big impact. And I love that. We're going to put that foundation's link in the show notes as well. So if anybody is interested in looking it up. And I did find what the 2 organizations were that I was thinking of. It's Charity Navigator, and I believe it's Charity Watch. And both of those basically provide their own evaluations of nonprofit effectiveness. So it's a great way to look and see if the nonprofit you're giving back to is effective in their mission, which just makes you feel a little better about giving money to them. A lot of people in the FI community want to spend time giving back after they've reached financial independence, but a lot of them are also finding ways to give back while they're still working their 9-to-5s and just want to increase that when they reach financial independence. And it sounds like that's what's in your mind as well. I want to go back to the Design Your Extraordinary Life. I see that you went through a couple iterations when you try to define your extraordinary life. Can you talk about that process and what iterations you went with and what you landed on?
Yeah. Initially, I did not have this tool described in 9 different aspects of life. So I went on to understand, okay, how do I spend my time and how do I spend my money? So I just asked this question to myself and wrote down what my values are, what I care about. And then obviously it came out with the similar things like, hey, mental health, physical health, family, love and relationships and passion projects, etc. So that those categories kind of like I got to them. And I just started asking myself these questions that I actually heard from the community. Why are you alive? What do you think you want to do? What do you really enjoy? I also had to understand that purpose doesn't have to be big thing. It's just something that you enjoy. And I was really stuck in this notion of, purpose means adding value to others. It has to be about serving others. And that's where my first iteration was, because initially I said, I want to serve others. So I will just use all my skills, whether it's in construction, personal finance, or whatever I enjoy, whether it's tennis, to serve others, whether it's to play with others. I would choose to play tennis with people who are not as great as I am, so I can help them. I got stuck there. But then it was only later when I found out that it's not necessarily about serving others. It's about finding out what you really enjoy. That took a lot of time. And then I came up with different answers of what I really enjoy and why I really enjoy. So that was an iterative process. And then when I listened to the Design Your Extraordinary Life podcast, that 9 different areas was really helpful to do a life review and understand where you are. And I started writing down what I really care about and how do I want to improve. I actually wrote down my vision statement. I have not finalized them because I still want to mull over them. But I came across this another podcast called 10X Mindset, which says that if you want to change yourself or transform yourself, you really have to put that vision out there. Then only your mind will think about how to get there. But if you don't put that out there and say, I want this, then your mind is never going to think about them. And many of the times, if no matter how transformative or different that vision is, you will realize that you have to replace the 80% of the things that you're currently doing because they are not able to going to get you there. You really have to start asking yourself those questions. What am I going to need to do to get to that vision? And you will realize that if you actually list down 100% of the things that you currently do, you can then sort them out and say, okay, these are the things that are supporting that vision. These are the things that are not supporting that vision. For example, my vision is to have a very healthy lifestyle and maintain certain body fat percentage so that I can play more tennis. And so that means sugar doesn't help. Stop sugar. Alcohol doesn't help. Stop alcohol, right? I also came up with this belief that I want to be kinder and joyful. And I realized that philosophy didn't really support meat industry. I felt very bad that, okay, I used to eat meat and that vision doesn't support what I'm doing. And I stopped eating meat after that. I just moved to becoming a vegetarian. And so I wrote down everything that I was doing and said, okay, whatever that doesn't support that vision, I'm going to try and change those things. And I started doing more of the things that I have in the vision, right? For example, I wanted to spend more time in connecting with my friends. And so I just reached out to friends and said, hey, can we start doing one-on-one phone calls? I know we are far and whatever, but we now have one-on-one phone calls during lunch hour, like a Zoom meeting, and we just catch up on a lot of stuff. There are some friends who like to have me as an accountability buddy so that I'm sharing those things with them. But again, those are the things that I'm doing more because it supports that vision. So that's how I went through figuring out my journey towards my purpose and meaning. And again, this volunteering that I'm doing is part of that vision. I want to support the personal finance community, and I'm supporting that. That was my way of finding those answers out. And I'll be very honest, I'm still figuring it out myself.
I think that vision is something we're almost always going to be figuring out for basically the rest of our lives because it's always going to change, right? There's going to be things that come into our life that then affect our vision. For example, I used to be somebody who liked to move around a lot, either inside the city I was in or to other cities. And now that I have a partner and we live together and we own a home, I have more roots. And so it's less likely that I'm going to be doing that now. I will say, though, if our relationship ever ended, which it won't, but if it ever did, I'm off to Portugal because that was how I grew up. But the vision and the purpose of my life changed when somebody who affected my life very strongly came in, and I wanted it to change. I wanted to change in a way that we could spend more time together and have a life that we wanted to build. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Do you want to learn how to set powerful goals and invest wisely? Have you been yearning to quit your 9-to-5? Then my workbook, Your Journey to Freedom, is for you. This workbook is your roadmap to financial success. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, it's designed to help you define your goals, create a plan, and take action towards building wealth. Inside, you'll find practical exercises and tools that will help you identify your short, medium, and long-term financial goals, develop a personalized investment strategy tailored to these goals and your risk tolerance, track your progress and stay accountable to your financial objectives. Plus, there's bonus content like a quiz to test what you learn and a budget worksheet. With easy-to-follow instructions and insightful prompts, this workbook will empower you to make confident decisions and stay focused on your financial journey. Don't let another day go by without taking charge of your financial life. Invest in yourself and your future with the Your Journey to Freedom workbook. Order now and start turning your dreams into reality. Visit my website at everyday-fi.com/guides to get your copy today and start your journey to financial freedom. For anybody who's interested in designing their extraordinary life, there's actually a free course that Alan and Katie Donegan put on. I will put the link in the show notes. And of course, I will put the link to the Design Your Extraordinary Life podcast episode in the show notes so that you guys can all design your extraordinary life. And I think Alan will absolutely love that because it was a really fun exercise over that weekend, very intensive exercise. But I also really liked, Abhishek, what you said about how there are certain things that feed into your vision and other things that don't, because I think that really goes back to the idea of sometimes people get onto this hamster wheel of society where they think they need the big house and the picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the 2 golden retriever dogs and the American flag in their, front yard, whatever, and the big SUV. But if you were to ask yourself, okay, what is the vision of your life truly? And if that person who has that kind of life with their family says, you know what, I actually want us to be a multinational family that just travels all the time. Okay, so is that big house and that big car feeding into that dream? Is it allowing you to see that dream through? Probably not, because it's expensive and it's hard to probably rent it out, especially if you're in the suburbs. And it would be better if you were to maybe rent. And so there are really big questions you have to ask yourself when you're designing this life that might be hard to let go of. But if you are purposeful about it, and of course, talk to your partners about doing it, then you can live that vision today and not have to be on autopilot. So I really love everything that you said. You said that you should put your vision out there, and that's how you are able to build the life around it. What do you mean by put it out there? Can you give us an example of how you did that?
When I say put out there, as in you just write it down, right? What I did is that I was initially having a vision that was not really thinking about complete all aspects of my life. But then from this workshop, I got these 9 aspects. So I wrote a vision for each of them and I just combined that vision. And I just said, how does that look like? Do you resonate with everything, every single word in that vision? And when I say put it out there, as in just wrote it down, whether you write it down on your wall or your goals or somewhere, but write it down where you revisit it again and again. And I think you have to believe. I struggled with that for a long time, but you really have to believe, and then only you will start taking those actions. And you have to detach yourself from the result or the outcome, because the focus is not on the outcome. The focus is on your journey. Did you actually enjoy working towards journey matters more than the milestone you achieved. For example, I signed up for a USTA league in my local area because I felt like that was my milestone. I want to become a 4.0 player. And I went through that league. I won the first league that I played. And then it was like, you know what? It doesn't really matter to me whether I'm 4.0 or not. It's the fact that I enjoy. And I lowered it down and said, I don't need to be 4.0. I just need to play 4 times a week. And that's just good enough. And so it's the journey towards that. I still want to get better, but that's not my top priority, because you can't have everything, but you can have everything at certain, you have to have, cut that out. You can have everything, but not at the same time. And I'm quoting Alan's words from the podcast, the Tuesday 5 podcast. So I really resonated with that. And I had to prioritize that vision. I want to make more money in my career, but I just realized that career is not the most important thing for this year. I want to focus more on my mental health and my physical health. And that's just the goal that I've decided. And so putting it out there is writing it down like that and understanding it for yourself. And if you have close friends that you can be vulnerable with, go ahead and share that and get their feedback and ask them if they're missing something. A lot of the times these people are going to actually support you. And that's how my experience has been. And I've shared that, and I've really felt supported throughout the process.
Yeah, that's great. So share it with your friends and family, and then have it somewhere that you can come back to is a way of getting it out there.
One thing that I realized is that people would ask me all sorts of questions. Why you're doing this? Why you're doing that? And initially I felt like I had to defend myself. Oh yeah, this theory, that theory and all that. And now I don't have to, because I just say it's not part of my vision. It's not the life that I support or I want to live. And that's a very straightforward answer that anybody would say, wow, he just doesn't want to be part of killing animals. And that's why he's a vegetarian. What a great answer. What a great clarity, right? And when you have that why, nobody can shake you from that belief. And that's how my experience has been. So I think having your why and having that vision helps you, even though things can change and you can change, it helps you be comfortable with yourself.
Having that why won't shake you from your beliefs. It's perfect. I love it. Something that you said about where you were talking about that you had this goal of getting to 4.0, but you really realized that, oh, actually, I just want to do this 4 times a week. I love that idea because I think James Clear talks about this a little bit about mastery versus goal setting. And basically, instead of saying, I want to run a 10K or I'm not a runner, so I don't know what that is, but the one that's like 26 point something miles or something, he's like, instead of setting the goal of doing that, become the person who loves to run, because eventually you will get to the point where you can run that race. But instead of just having this one laser focused goal, you're developing small habits and creating the kind of person you want to be, rather than just hitting a goal and then the next goal and then the next goal and then the next goal, and then it's empty because you get to a point where you're like, well, what's next? What's next? And I love that idea because I never really resonated much with goals. I like the idea of just becoming the kind of person who does X. And that will just eventually get you to the goal that you might have had before, but in a way that's way more enjoyable and potentially slower, but more enjoyable. I want to switch topics a little bit to your strategy for reaching financial independence. We talked a lot about stock market and stock picking and everything like that. But do you want to say any more about your strategy for investing? Do you do any real estate? Do you have a side business? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
So I've dabbled into a lot of different things over the years, and I've realized that my values is what drives me. And I realized that I'm able to get the biggest bang for my buck by index funds. So I continue to invest in index funds. But I went both ways that the community in general talks about: increase your income and limit your expenses. And because I lived very frugally in my initial 10 years of my career, I was fortunate enough to have a large sum that saved. And now that my expenses have just grown dramatically, it's okay because I know that my nest egg is growing equally at a healthy rate. But I'm not stressed about it. I know that every 3 or 4 years, I'm going to go probably change a job with a good raise, and that's going to help me keep up with the market or inflation in general. I did start a side hustle. I had a side hustle where I was subbing out work in India. So basically in construction, we can take on projects such as designs and estimation, and they are all you can do online. And now those skills are actually transferable to India. So I had a team set up in India, and I was taking on some projects over here and giving them out. And that side hustle was working for a really nice 2-3 years. And it worked me a healthy income. And that's how I was increasing my income in general, right? Other than this 9 to 5, I had this. And in 2023, 2024, I realized that doesn't align with my vision anymore. Even though I did that, if there are interesting projects that come along, and I'm always open, right? I'm out there meeting people, then I will consider. But that's the good part about, once you are 5 or you're close to 5, where you can make those choices for the people you want to work with, the job that you want to take on. And so since those opportunities didn't come along, I said, you know what, I'm going to cut it down. Now there are a couple of clients who just continues to give me a healthy work at a healthy rate. And I have a team that's actually working very well. So it's a very minimal effort and that's just growing. But I'm not stressing about increasing my income, even though my expenses have increased, because I've understood that, okay, over time, as long as I'm saving healthy amount, I'm able to actually grow my nest egg to get to where I want to. So I would just answer that by saying, try to increase your income, limit your expenses. I do invest a lot in India. Surprisingly, even though there is a dollar to INR conversion rate where you lose about 5% annually because dollar is increasing as compared to rupee in about 5%, there are some mutual funds in India that are having compounding annual rate of returns of north of 20%, 22%, which has been very surprising. And I have been invested in these funds since 2014. And we as a family are just amazed how that investment have turned out to me. And so that was very interesting that, okay, even if I'm losing 5% annually, I'm still beating the market by a healthy margin at about 14, 15, 16% annually, right? So we have our funds invested in India heavily. And we continue to believe that Indian stock market would give healthy returns. And I consider that as a part of my strategy.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, you're investing in your home country. For me, it wouldn't just be about the returns. It would be about that I'm supporting my home country, even though I'm not there anymore. And so I really like that idea that if you are somebody who is living in the United States but isn't from here, you still have the option of potentially investing in your own country and making that a part of your portfolio. And it can be more about the return. It can be less about the returns. And especially if you're in a certain kind of country that doesn't necessarily give you those kinds of returns like India might. I also want to know what level of FI you want to reach. So I know you mentioned earlier that you're at Coast FI now, which for the audience, Coast FI is when your retirements reach a certain amount that if you didn't put another dollar in, once you hit retirement age, you could retire and not have to worry about money anymore. And usually retirement age is between 59 and a half and 65 right now for that Coast FI number. But is there another level of FI that you would like to reach?
I was initially thinking about Fat Five because I wanted to be conservative, but then I realized that I have only one life. I'm going to be in my 30s and 40s for only once in my life. And I obviously read Die with Zero, and it changed a lot of my perspectives. So currently, I'm just shooting for regular FI, honestly. And what I'm thinking is that if I get to the regular FI, I might start transitioning to part-time work that supports my annual expenses, so that I can transition into the career that I want, the job that I want, whether it's investing or volunteering or something else. And I know that I would continue to work in one capacity, one domain or the other. So I don't think my income is going to go to zero anytime soon. But it's just that I would have the healthy buffer to tell any employer saying, hey, you know what? I'm good. I'm working for this year, but next year I'm going to take 4 months off. If you want me, great. If not, I'll find another job, right? So I just want that flexibility. And I'm hoping that my investing journey goes well. And if it does, that generates some amount of income. But if it doesn't, that's fine. If I don't need the money, I'm going to probably use that to give it to charity. But it just depends. I'm hoping to transition into full-time investor at some point. But if not, part-time job is great as long as my expenses are low.
It's all about whether or not you want to sacrifice to the point to get there versus living your life now. So I really like how you're balancing that. So one thing I wanted to add to some of these interviews that I'm very interested in hearing about is this community attracts a certain kind of person. And I feel like a lot of our early money memories and how we grew up with money can feed into how we view money today and potentially our money personalities. And I'm wondering if there are any clues there to, why somebody would choose this movement. And so I'm very curious, what are some of your earliest money memories that you have, and how did your family grow up with money?
I have a kind of like a surprising, funny story in that regard. My early money memories were not so strong. I grew up in a very comfortable household, and I pretty much was fortunate to get my needs met. So I think it actually created a cocoon around me that, Abhishek, you never have to worry about money. And I was in that mindset that, oh yeah, money's just going to come. It's taken care of. But it was only until I moved to US and then went through my master's, realized that I have to get a job and I'm going to have to pay my student loans, and my parents cannot support me anymore. And we got into this financial struggle as a family. That's when really, I think the abundance mindset that I previously had went to scarcity mindset, and it gave me a shock. It gave me that, oh, I need to work hard. I need to figure things out. And I got my anxiety about money. I think that's the strongest memory I have, which was back in 2015, 16. And it took a lot of struggles. It took 10 years to actually get out of that mindset, become or be in a healthy situation where my parents are retired fully and I don't have to worry about them or myself anymore. And I'm going back to abundance mindset. So that's what my journey has been.
Yeah. So it sounds like you started with an abundance mindset and you never had to worry about money. And then when you got into the real world, like a lot of us do, the shock of having to support ourselves puts us into a state of panic. Oh gosh, money is actually scarcer than I thought it was. But I love that you still built yourself back up to that abundance mindset. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for people who might still be in that scarcity mindset now and still have anxiety around having enough, and how you got out of that yourself. And if there's any advice that you have for people who are trying to get out of that and back to the abundance mindset.
I think the advice that I would give, because it worked for me, is that adversity is actually an opportunity. And what helps through adversity is knowledge, because knowledge can become your power, and then progress will pull you out of it. As long as you take time to learn the necessary knowledge to solve the problem or adversity you are in, and then be patient with yourself and show progress, which requires a lot of dedication, but slow or fast progress is progress, right? It will help you get out of any situation you are. And this has been the mantra that has worked for me and some of the people that I admire. I've seen them going through that. And that's what I would recommend, because I think just saying that, hey, believe in yourself, it's much harder to do than you think, especially for someone who's actually going through it at the moment. But what they could use is a rope or a guideline that says, okay, yeah, first I need to figure out what problem I have, then learn about how to solve it, and then start making progress on it. And as you start using your knowledge to make the progress, you will see and get the confidence to believe in yourself and say, okay, yeah, I've come a long way and I can still keep going, and I will get out of it. And so that's what I would say for somebody who's having that mindset and who wants to be in a better financial position could use.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that's good advice for anything, always starting small, even if you have a health goal or if you have some other goal, like maybe you want to get a master's degree or even a university degree at all, but you were the first person in your family to go to school. If you start small and start noticing that you're making progress, that can, like you said, build the confidence and then you'll gain that momentum to start achieving more and more and more, and it won't seem as hard. And I don't know if anybody remembers this from if you were ever in high school, and I don't know what high school is called in India, but it's high school here is when you're like between 15 and 18, right? And I remember the moment where I was done with middle school. So I was in 8th grade going to 9th grade, and high school was the big scary school, was the school where you had to make decisions about the life that you were going to live. And I was terrified when I think I was 14, which is hilarious to put that kind of stuff on a 14-year-old. But I was terrified. I was like, this is so much bigger than anything that I've ever had to do. And I'm so worried that I'm not going to be able to do any of it. But then when you get into 9th grade, you realize that, oh, it's actually kind of a continuation of 8th grade and it's not as bad. And then 10th grade is a continuation of 9th grade and then on, right? And it just builds on itself rather than just like throwing you in the deep end when you can't swim. And so if you think of goals in life and things that you want to achieve that way, and you take it in small chunks, it'll be way more manageable than just thinking of the huge goal that you have to reach, like reaching $1 million. That's scary. But if you're like, okay, actually, let's reach $5,000. Okay, now let's reach 10. Now let's reach 20. And just mark all of those off. You'll start to just see how easy it actually is. And you'll be able to do it much easier. We're talking about having confidence and going from scarcity to abundance. And I'm curious, now that you're in the abundance mindset, if you still have any struggles that you're dealing with right now, whether they're FI related or not, that you would like to share with the community that we can learn from you.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't call them struggle. I would just call them milestones or challenges. I think a struggle is when you don't have food on the plate. Struggle is when you don't have shelter. So when I compare myself to that, I wouldn't call myself a struggle, just to put that in a context. But in general, what I'm working on is that my expenses this year has increased dramatically because of cost of living in the Bay Area, because I moved out of shared apartment into my own apartment as a intentional FI choice. But I'm confident that I'll be able to grow my income to support that in the coming years. And, it's a matter of $12,000 or so that I'm spending extra. And I'm like, okay, yeah, Abhishek, all you have to do is figure out whether it's side hustle or a different job. How can you fill that gap? And so when you start looking at it that way, it's like, oh yeah, I can do that in a couple of years. I don't have to worry about it. And so again, I feel like I'm able to actually execute on the abundance mindset to feel okay with my increased expenses. And some of the strategies that have worked for me in the past, hopefully they keep working in the future.
Thanks for sharing that. And this will probably be easier for you to answer then. What are some of your wins that you have right now?
I would say in past year or so, I think my win has been to get into the abundance mindset. I think that's the hardest part because if you have the right mindset and attitude, everything else is just numbers that either works out over time. So it's a logistic game other than that. But mindset helps you reduce your anxiety. So I think that's a win for me because I would have had a lot of anxiety if this was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because I remember myself back then. Non-fi related, I think this year has been a lot of growth. I have to give a lot of credit to what I've been reading about consciousness in general. And this is something that has helped me through my meditation. And I follow a certain meditation from Isha Institute of Engineering, which is in India, and it's run by Sadhguru. And I think that reading his book and meditation has helped me become more conscious about my values. It has actually made me answer these questions for myself. Hey, what I care about, what I don't care about, what do I not like about this situation? And that has been my win, honestly, for this year because it made me stop alcohol. I stopped processed sugar. I started taking cold showers. I started journaling and I stopped eating meat. So these are all the changes that I would have never been able to do if I was not conscious about them. And when I thought about them consciously, I was like, yeah, I want to make a conscious choice versus compulsive behavior.
That is incredible that you were able to do all of that by basically adopting this mindset. I would love to get the resource to the meditation technique that you do. I think it would be helpful for a lot of people who might be struggling to stop certain things. I know myself, I don't drink either, mainly because it gives me migraines, but I cannot stop sugar. It's so hard. Like I definitely have an addiction and I love sugar and I love desserts. I think it's because it brings me back to being a kid again in the 90s and like Halloween. And I don't know, it's hard. There's a lot of nostalgia for me when it comes to sugar. Do you have a life hack or a recommendation or learning that you could share with the community? I know we've been talking a lot about what you've done so far, but is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered yet?
I could probably add a couple of things. The one thing that you were just talking about, processed sugar, the way I was able to get around it myself, and I'll just be honest, I've been guilty of having it maybe once a month, twice a month, but it has definitely reduced as a habit. The reason is that my grandmother passed away last year, and when somebody in the family passes away, we as a family give away a food. Hey, we are not supposed to eat this anymore for a year or whatever amount of time in the memory, right, of the person who passed away. And so I said, okay, what can I give away? And I said, okay, let's do sugar because I don't like sugar anyway, or I don't want it, right? I like it, but I don't want it. And I think if I am making a commitment towards my grandmother, I can say very easily, hey, here's the reason why I'm not having it. And nobody would be able to force me when I give out that reason. And that reason also gave me an opportunity to remember her. So every time people would, hey, why just have a cookie or this or that, I would say, hey, no, I'm sorry. My grandmother passed away. I'm doing it for her memory. And I'm genuinely doing it for that memory. But that helped ease into it because my commitment to that became stronger. And even though I'm guilty of having it broken a few times, I know that in my heart that as a habit, it has reduced. And I know my grandmom's probably not going to judge me at all, but I think she would appreciate that there are some times that I actually gave up. I said no. And I think that helped. So I would definitely consider that as a hack. Find an emotional reason for you. Another reason that I have is that I have a 9-year-old niece and I love her to death. And one of the reasons I found through my journey of exploration that I want to be there for her in case ever she needs me. And that means I want to live a long life because she's just 9 years old right now. And I want to live throughout her life. That means I have to be 90 years old. And I said, okay, does sugar help me live 90 years old? Probably not. And so I was able to attach that to say, oh yeah, I'm doing it for her. Her name is Gautami. And I'm like, yeah, it's for you. And that's a very strong reason to say no. It's a very nice reason to actually tell somebody how you care about your niece or beloved family member. And they'll be like, yeah, I'm happy for you. So nobody's going to force you. I think that's the hack.
That resonated with me so much because I am also vegetarian, but I went vegetarian first, not just because I love animals. I do love animals, but because I had a friend who got cancer at the age of 40. and he adopted a vegetarian diet to help his body fight off the cancer while he was also undergoing treatment. He stopped eating red meat. He stopped drinking alcohol. He did all of these things because he was trying so hard to survive. And unfortunately, he did not survive. He died at the age of 41. And when that happened, I was eating like crap. I was eating meat and cheese and pizza and Chinese food and all this crap. And I was like, I'm literally treating my body like crap. And he was struggling to survive. I can't possibly do this anymore. So I went vegetarian in 2013 and I never went back. And it's hard because I'm also having trouble with B12 because I'm a vegetarian now, but it still won't push me back to eating meat because I feel like I made that commitment to my friend who's no longer here. And it's so much more powerful. And I feel like it's a little sad that you're more likely to do something like that when somebody else is at stake, than doing it for yourself. Because I was also speaking to a friend literally last night about how I feel like my sugar addiction is just off the charts. And I was like, but you know what? If I were to get pregnant, I'd kick that habit like that because I'd be eating for somebody other than myself. And I know that pregnant women have cravings and everything, but I feel like I would be able to overcome that because to me, the strength of the love for that little being inside me would catapult me into the healthiest that I would ever be. So I just think that's so funny. And I resonated so hard with that. So I wanted to say that before you moved on to your next hack. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Sorry to hear about your friend, but I resonated with whatever you said as well. So another learning recommendation for the community, I think when you're on this journey to FI, if you want to be, I think it can be a long journey for some or small for some, but I think enjoying the journey is more important. And I think what I have found is that having an abundance mindset and creating a purposeful life for yourself or designing your life makes you feel like you are in control, even though you may not be, right? Like I'll totally be honest that I'm not in my control for the 40 hours a week, right? Because I have to do that. But hey, you are actually in your control for the rest of the time, which is still 60-70% of the time, right? And when you feel that, you can create an extraordinary life that you want. And when you start investing yourself in that, you just kind of like move away from the numbers game. You move away from when am I going to hit that milestone? You move away from how difficult your job might be. And you start focusing on what are the things that I'm doing that I enjoy and how I'm creating my life. And it takes time. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't happen in a day or a year. It takes time. But once you start that journey, you will feel more at ease, enjoying, excited versus just waiting for numbers to kick in that milestone. And I think that's the hack I would say. If I would have known this 5 years ago, it would have been difficult for me to believe given the mindset that I was in. But I wish somebody would have sat down and told me this, like, Abhishek, I'm telling you, I'm here, I'm fine. This is what you need to do so that you will enjoy your journey. Because 5 years ago, I was not in a great place and I was trying to cut down on every single expense. And now I think my life is fulfilled. I do a lot of things that I really, really enjoy. And I don't even look forward to giving up my job anymore. I just like, yeah, let's, you may not save as much as you did 1 year or the other, but as long as you are enjoying your life and you can find a way to enjoy your job or cut it down, that's still a win. And I focus more on that. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I love that. And it demonstrates how much the FI movement has changed because originally it was about, increase your income, decrease your expenses, grow the gap, invest 50%, 60%, 70%, get to financial independence to where you can quit your job as quickly as possible. And that was the message. And that was it. And I can see why people like Ramit Sethi, who, is not a fan of the FIRE movement, takes issue with that because it leaves out the human aspect of what life is. And it boils it down to numbers only. And that's not what life is about. Life is about exactly what you just said, living your vision, creating the extraordinary life, having an abundance mindset And, I feel like I love the direction that the FI movement is going in, because that's what we're starting to stress rather than just saving as much as you can. I mean, that is still a part of it, of course, because we know that saving as much as you can gets you closer to that vision even faster. But it's still about the vision and the life that you can live. So I really love that you said that. And I'm really happy you were able to come on, and thank you so much. And this was so much fun, and I loved hearing your story. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Everyday 5 podcast. If you're loving the show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. Number 2, please leave a review. I'm always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And finally, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everyday5podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit counts. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.